The Caged Beast and the Calm Human. In the dark hall of the alien research lab, lights flickered. A group of tall alien scientists stood behind glass walls, their eyes fixed on a metal cage. Inside the cage was something terrifying, a creature. 3 times bigger than any man, muscles like steel, claws like blades, eyes burning red. It roared, and even the guards stepped back. This was Nirax, the beast from the Black Moon. No one could tame him, no one could fight him. Until today, a door opened, and a human was pushed inside the chamber. He didn't scream, didn't panic. He just stood still, calm as a rock. His name was Dane, a prisoner from Earth. The aliens laughed. Send a sheep to fight a lion. One said, "This will be over in seconds," said another. But Nirax didn't attack. He stopped moving. He stared at Dane. The beast sniffed the air, then growled softly. Zalari, the young alien scientist, leaned forward. "What is it doing?" She whispered. Nirax stepped closer to Dane, but not to kill. He looked into the human's eyes. Then, slowly, he did something no one expected. He bowed his head. The room went silent. Even Zalari was speechless. The alien beast saw something inside the human, and whatever it was, it changed everything. If you like this style and outline, I'll continue and write part 2 next. Let me know if you want any changes, or if you'd like voiceover formatting applied to this part now too. You said, Part 1. The Caged Beast and the Calm Human, 800 words. Kaliko, or interest in Hunachea, or third-person style Malekni how or simple basic English, ka use Karna ChatGPT said. Sure. Below is Part 1. The Caged Beast and the Calm Human, written in third person. Around 800 words, using simple, clear English with suspense and hooks to keep viewers engaged. Perfect for your YouTube HFY sci-fi content. I have replaced every full stop with a comma, so it flows well in a voiceover narration. Part 1. The Caged Beast and the Calm Human. The lights flickered in the cold alien lab. Sharp blue beams glowed from the walls, making the place feel even colder. Behind a thick glass wall, a group of alien scientists watched with interest. They were tall, slim creatures with glowing eyes and sharp features. They all focused on the giant cage in the middle of the chamber. Inside that cage was a monster. The creature stood over 10 feet tall. Its muscles were huge, covered in rough, dark skin. Its claws looked like blades, and its yellow eyes burned like fire. This was Nirax, known across galaxies as the Beast. From the Black Moon, he was the most dangerous living creature in the alien archives. No alien had been able to control him. Many had tried, but all had failed. Some even died. Now, the aliens wanted to try something new, something strange. They had brought a human. The door opened with a sharp hiss. 2 guards pushed a man into the chamber. He was average in height, had short brown hair, and wore a dirty gray jumpsuit. There were bruises on his face, but he walked calmly. No fear in his eyes, no panic in his steps. His name was Dane. He was taken from a ruined Earth colony. No one knew much about him. To the aliens he looked weak, small, and unimportant. Is this a joke? One of the alien scientists laughed. You want him to face the beast? Another asked, shaking their head. He won't last 5 seconds. The cage door opened with a heavy rumble. Nirax growled and slammed his fist into the ground. The sound echoed through the chamber, but Dane didn't move. He just looked at the beast, his face calm, his hands behind his back. Something strange happened. Nirax stopped. The beast didn't charge, didn't roar again. Instead, he tilted his head and stared at the human. The aliens leaned forward, confused. Zalari, a young alien scientist with silver skin and bright violet eyes, looked closely. What's going on? She asked quietly. Nirax slowly sniffed the air. He took 1 step closer to Dane, then another. Dane still didn't move. He just kept staring back, like he was looking deep into the soul of the beast. There was no hate in his eyes, no fear, no surprise, only silence. Nirax's breathing changed. His growl faded. Then, Something no one had ever seen before happened. The great beast bent his knees, lowered his head, and bowed. The entire room went silent. No one moved, even the guards. Outside the chamber looked at each other in shock. Did he just bow? Zalari whispered. That's impossible, another scientist said, stepping back. The beast doesn't submit to anyone. Jorak stayed still, his head low in front of Dane. The human didn't smile, didn't speak. He just looked down at the creature, calm and silent. Zalari pressed the button to open the voice channel. Human, she said. What did you do to it? Dane slowly turned his head toward the glass. His eyes met hers. I didn't do anything, he said in a low voice. It just saw me. Saw what? She asked, confused. The truth, Dane said. That I'm not prey. The silence returned. Jorak remained still, showing respect or fear. No one could tell. The aliens in the lab started whispering among themselves. Some said the experiment had failed. Others thought it had just begun. But Zalari felt something else. Something cold run down her spine. She looked again at the human. He was no warrior, not like they imagined. But there was something inside him, something darker. Something even the beast had recognized. Maybe the real danger wasn't the alien monster in the cage. Maybe it was the quiet human standing calmly beside it. And in that moment, one thing became clear to her. They had made a mistake bringing Dane here. A very big mistake. Because Jorak wasn't the only predator in the room anymore. Asterisk, the beast bows. There was silence. A silence so deep. It felt like the universe itself had stopped to listen. Inside the alien lab, no one blinked. No one moved. Jorak, the great beast of war, still had his head lowered in front of the human. The moment felt impossible. A creature that had torn machines apart, eaten soldiers alive, and roared at the skies, was now silent, calm, respectful. Dane stood still. His face showed no joy, no pride, no fear. He simply watched, like this was something he had seen before, from behind the glass. Zalari's hand hovered over the security panel. She had trained for 5 years in Xenobeast control. She had studied the monster's every movement, every attack, but nothing had prepared her for this. Open the gate, a deep voice said behind her. It was Commander Threx, leader of the alien science unit. He wore dark armor and had a cybernetic eye that glowed red. Zalari turned quickly. That's insane, she said. If we open the gate now, the beast could. Threx raised a hand, stopping her words. I want to see what happens when they're alone, he said. Let the human speak, with a trembling hand. Zalari pressed the override. The inner gate opened, and the energy walls between Dane and Jorak faded. Now, there was nothing between them. No walls, no bars, no protection, only instinct. Jorak raised his head slowly, his yellow eyes locked. Onto Dane's then. The beast did something no one could explain. He made a sound, not a growl, not a roar, but a low, ancient sound, like a memory being pulled from the bones of time. Zalari's heart pounded. That sound wasn't in any record. She quickly scanned the language database. The system struggled, then gave a result: respect. It was a word spoken by creatures only to those they followed. Jorak wasn't afraid. He was choosing to follow the human. Inside the chamber, Dane finally moved. He stepped forward slowly, looking directly into Jorak's eyes. Then, he lifted his hand and placed it on the beast's head. Jorak didn't flinch. Instead, he closed his eyes like he trusted Dane completely. The room behind the glass broke into chaos. Scientists shouted, alarms beeped, data crashed, nothing like this had ever happened in any experiment across the galaxy. This wasn't fear, this was submission, from the strongest creature ever captured. Threx narrowed his eye and turned to Zalari. Find out who that human is, he said. Now, Zalari nodded and rushed to her console. She typed Dane's name into the intergalactic database. At first, nothing came up. Then the system found something, a restricted file, marked Earth Military, black level clearance. Her hands paused above the keys. Her throat went dry. She had never seen a file that classified before. Not even the commanders were allowed to open it. She looked at the screen and whispered, "What are you?" Back in the chamber, Dane sat down on the ground. Jorok curled beside him like a trained beast at rest. The human closed his eyes and leaned back. Calm again, not as a prisoner, but as something else entirely, as a leader, as a predator in disguise for her. The first time, the aliens watching weren't just observing a test. They were witnessing something older than science, older than power, the silent connection between killer and killer. One born in space and one born on Earth. And somewhere, deep in her mind, Zalari felt a warning, not from the beast, but from the human who had tamed it with nothing but presence. Something dark lived inside him, something that the galaxy had forgotten, but the beast remembered, and it had bowed to it. Zalari's curiosity couldn't sleep, not that night, not after what she had seen. The image of Jorok bowing to a human replayed in her mind again and again. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense. She sat alone in the dark chamber of her research quarters. The only light came from the screen in front of her. Lines of restricted files, encrypted histories, locked away by the higher command. She had no clearance, but curiosity had no rules. Her fingers danced on the console. She bypassed firewalls with tricks she had learned from smugglers. Not teachers. The system warned her with red flashes, but she didn't stop. She needed to know who Dane really was. The file opened with a quiet hum. Her eyes scanned the text, her mouth slowly falling open. Dane Ashwin. Born on a frontier colony near Earth. No official military rank, no awards. But behind that fake identity was something else, something hidden deep. Project Revenant, a black-level Earth initiative that trained a specific type of human. Not soldiers, not assassins, but predators. Men and women chosen for something ancient. They were raised in war zones, trained without comfort, taught to think like hunters. Not just to survive, but to dominate. The file included recordings. Zalari opened one, hands shaking slightly. It showed Dane, years younger. Trapped in a jungle filled with strange beasts. He had no weapons, no food, no backup, but one by one, he hunted the creatures, not just with skill, but with patience, cold focus, and a calm face. He moved like he had no fear. He killed like it was a routine. And when he looked at the last creature, the camera zoomed in. Those were the same eyes he had, now cold, still calculating. Zalari leaned back in her chair. Her breath was shallow. This man wasn't a prisoner. He was something designed to break nature itself. A soft voice came through her earpiece. It was Jorok. His telepathic signal was faint but clear. "He is one of the old ones," the beast said. "Your kind forgot what humans are, but we did not." Zalari blinked. "You speak?" She whispered. "We always spoke," Jorok replied, "but not to those who are blind." She sat in silence, staring at her screen. Dane wasn't the experiment. He wasn't the test subject. They were. Everything flipped in her mind. All her years of science, control, data, useless. Because something more primal was in that room with them. Not just the beast, but the human. She looked again at the final entry in the file, a sentence marked as a note from Earth's highest military commander. It read, "If captured, do not underestimate. He is not a man, he is the memory of what we once were." Zilleri stood from her chair and looked through the window at the sleeping chambers. There, behind reinforced glass, Dane sat in the corner of his cell, calm, silent, eyes closed. But even in rest, he felt like a storm waiting to rise, and next to him, Jorok watched, not as a master, but as a follower. In that moment, Zalari knew she had two choices. She could stay loyal to her species, to her mission, or she could follow the truth, follow the predator the universe forgot. And something inside her whispered the answer, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of the beast. She was afraid of the calm human sitting next to it. Unleashing the human predator. The alarm didn't start with a sound. It started with a flicker, just a blink in the hallway lights. Then the entire station shook. Zalari dropped her tablet and looked up. Her screen flashed red, showing one word, breach. An explosion hit the west wing. Screams echoed through the comms. Security bots activated. Doors slammed shut. The lab had been attacked, but not by Jorak, not by Dane. By something else, rebel aliens, mercenaries who hated the Science Council and its cruel experiments. They had come to destroy the labs and free the beasts. Zalari ran toward the viewing chamber. Inside, Jorak was pacing, and Dane was standing perfectly still. Get him out. One of the commanders yelled, "He'll be killed in there." But Zalari hesitated. She looked at the monitor showing rebel heat signatures. They were close, too close. If the rebels reached this level, they'd open every cage, every door. The room vibrated again. A second explosion shook the floors. The security walls around Dane's cell started to glitch. Sparks flew, systems crashed. Then the door opened on its own, not because of failure. Because Dane moved. He stepped out of the chamber like he had just woken up from a nap. Jorak followed behind him without a sound. No chains, no commands. No fear, just two predators walking into war. Zalari called out, "Dane, you need to stay here." But he didn't respond. He looked at her once, and in that one glance she felt it. That calm, cold thing inside him, it had woken up. Dane reached the hallway first. 3 rebel fighters rounded the corner, armed and ready. They didn't ask questions, they fired. But Dane was already moving. He rolled to the side, fast and low. In one motion, he grabbed the metal shard from the floor and threw it. The shard flew straight into the throat of the lead attacker. He grabbed the second one's weapon before he could react, snapped his neck with precision. Jorak slammed into the third rebel like a wall of muscle. Blood hit the walls. Silence returned. Zalari watched it all from the cameras. Her heart raced. That wasn't a human prisoner. That was something trained for war in its rawest form. Dane didn't pause. He picked up the weapon and moved like he was home. Every step was controlled, every movement calculated. He didn't panic, he hunted. In the control room, Threx growled. "He's dangerous. Shut down every hallway now." But the system was already too damaged. Dane was cutting through rebels and reaching higher levels faster than they could respond. Zalari switched cameras, watching him clear paths with Jorak by his side. It was like watching a storm that had finally been let loose. He didn't talk. He didn't shout. He just moved, like this was what he was built for. One rebel tried to surrender. Dane didn't blink. He knocked him unconscious and kept going. He didn't kill unless he had to. But when he had to, it was quick, clean, and without hesitation. In one hallway, he stopped and pulled a body aside. Not to steal a weapon, to take a small metal chip from the uniform. Zalari zoomed in on her screen. It was a command access key. He wasn't just fighting. He was collecting tools, gathering control, thinking 5 steps ahead. She whispered to herself, "He's not escaping. He's taking over." And she was right. Within 20 minutes, Dane had reached the central core. He plugged in the chip, bypassed the locks, and opened the communication grid. A voice came through the speakers, calm and familiar. "Earth Command. This is Revenant Echo 7. Target complete. Facility compromised. Requesting cleanup crew." Zalari stepped back. She stared at the speaker in shock. He wasn't just a human. He was an operative. This entire time, they thought they were testing him. But he had been watching, waiting, preparing. Jorak stood beside him, silent and loyal. And in that moment, every alien in the station finally understood. The beast had never bowed to a man. He had bowed to the apex predator, the one thing nature feared the most. A human, fully awake. Truth about the beast: the fires had stopped, the screams faded. The halls of the alien station were quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that follows after something powerful has passed. Dane stood in the command chamber, looking out over the stars through the main window. His weapon hung loosely at his side, not from exhaustion, from control. Behind him stood Jorak, the beast, the killer, the legend, now quiet, loyal, watching. Zalari entered slowly, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She held no weapon, only questions. She had seen enough to stop fearing the beast, now she feared. What came before it? Dane didn't turn when she spoke. You knew this would happen. She said softly, You let us capture you. I didn't let you, Dane replied, his voice calm. You just weren't ready to stop me. She walked closer, still keeping distance. She looked up at Jorak, the monster who once ripped through ships like paper. Now he stood like a shadow beside the human. Silent and still. You're not just a soldier, she said. You're something older. Dane finally turned, his eyes sharp but steady. I'm not the story here, he said. Then looked at Jorak. He is. For the first time Jorak spoke. Aloud, his voice was deep, not just in sound and meaning. It echoed like a memory carved into stone. You broke us, he said, looking at Zalari. Long ago. Before your cities, before your science, Zalari frowned. What are you talking about? Jorak stepped forward, his heavy claws tapping the floor gently. You call us beasts, he said, but once, we were kings of the dark moons. We ruled the wild planets, hunted the stars for prey. Then the humans came. Dane stood still, silent, letting the beast speak. Jorak's eyes glowed faintly, not with anger, but with something deeper, something ancient. We fought them. Jorak continued. We thought they were prey. Small, soft, weak. But they kept coming. They did not hunt with strength, but with purpose. They killed for survival, but they also killed for understanding. Zalari stepped back slightly, her heart beating faster. She had read about early human wars, their brutal tactics, but hearing it from a creature like Jorak made it feel real. They hunted us, Jorak said. Not because they had to, but because they could, and we learned. Learned that inside the skin of a human is something even we fear. He pointed one long claw at Dane. The mind of a killer wrapped in calm. The heart of a predator that smiles, Zalari whispered. You remember humans from the ancient wars? Jorak nodded. We passed the memory in blood, from parent to child. When we saw him we knew. He was not the first. He was just the first to return. Dane finally spoke again. I didn't come to kill, he said. I came to warn you. Warn us? Zalari asked, of what? Dane stepped toward the central console. He activated a hidden file, one even the rebels hadn't touched. A hologram lit up the room. It showed a map of space. Blinking red, fleets marked with the human flag, moving fast, precise, unstoppable. Earth has changed, Dane said. We're no longer crawling, we're marching. Zalari stared at the screen. You're going to war, she whispered. No, Dane said. We're coming to remind the galaxy who we are. Jorak stepped beside him. I do not bow to men, he said. I bow to what your kind became. Zalari looked at both of them, the beast and the human, one born from nature's fury, the other shaped by survival and steel, and in that moment, she understood. Jorak had not submitted to weakness. He had recognized a forgotten truth. Humans were not prey. They were evolution's final weapon. Asterisk, the rise of the predator, the sky above the alien station was cracked. Not by weapons, not by ships, but by fear. A message had been sent, across the stars, across systems. A single pulse carried a silent truth. The humans were awake again, inside the ruined halls of the research facility. Dane stood over the central map table. His fingers moved across it with calm speed, marking zones, calculating routes. He wasn't guessing. He was preparing. Jorak watched from the side, like a general waiting for the command. Around them, rebel fighters patched wounds and repaired broken gear. Many of them had feared Jorak just hours ago. Now they followed him. Because he followed the human. Zalari stood near the doorway. She hadn't spoken since the hologram revealed Earth's silent fleet. She didn't know who to trust anymore, her own people, or the predator who saved them. Dane looked up at her. You don't have to stay, he said. You're not a fighter. She shook her head slowly. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I want to understand why you fight." Dane walked toward her, his steps light but steady. He stopped just a few inches from her face. "I don't fight for power," he said. "I fight because I remember what happens when we forget who we are." She didn't speak. She just looked into his eyes and saw something that felt older than war. A hunger that wasn't for blood, but for purpose. That night, the plan began. Dane split the rebels into teams. He showed them how to move unseen, how to break systems without alerting security, how to disable armor using wires and patience, not brute force. They listened. Because his words were not orders, they were survival codes, and every tip he gave had been tested in 100 human wars. Even Nirax followed those tactics, silent, fast, brutal when needed, but never wasteful. They struck the first target before sunrise, a power relay station guarded by elite drones. The rebels had failed to break it for years. Dane took it in 12 minutes. Not with guns, but with shadows, traps, and the element of fear. He didn't just win, he taught, and in doing so he changed them across the system. Other rebel cells heard the stories, not about Nirax, but about the human. The one who could move through steel like smoke. The one who could teach monsters how to fight like men. In hidden caves, in deep space, they whispered his name, not as a threat, but as a sign. "The predator walks again," they said. Meanwhile, Zalari followed him closely. Every time he returned from a mission, she waited. She asked questions, studied his choices, and one night, she finally asked the question, sitting in her heart, "Do you enjoy it?" She whispered, "The killing." Dane sat on the edge of the platform, watching the stars. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I enjoy being alive, and sometimes staying alive means becoming what others fear." She sat beside him. "You make me question everything I believed," she said. "That's good," he replied. "If you don't question, you stop evolving." Behind them, Nirax stood guard. Even in silence, he seemed to listen, as if part of him understood the words more deeply than any of them. Zalari knew then. This wasn't just about rebellion or revenge, it was about memory. Dane wasn't teaching them to fight. He was reminding them how to survive. Because deep in the stars, a storm was coming, and only predators would stand through it. She looked at him, the quiet human with the eyes of a killer, and made her choice, not as a scientist, but as someone who believed in what she saw. From that moment, Zalari stopped recording the experiment and started following the leader. Even the stars fear us. The stars began to move, not with sound, not with light, but with presence. Sensors across 5 systems went dark. Long-range satellites shut down one by one, and every radar in the quadrant showed the same impossible thing. Something massive was coming. Zalari stood on the cliffside above the rebel base. She looked up, her breath caught in her throat. Even from this distance, she could see the black silhouettes gliding in space. They weren't ships, they were shadows wrapped in armor. And each of them carried the same mark, the sigil of Earth. Dane stood beside her, still calm, still silent, but this time, even he seemed different, not sharper, not colder, just ready. "They came for you," Zalari whispered. Dane didn't nod, didn't blink. "They came for all of us," he replied. The first ship broke through the clouds like a god returning home. A deep hum spread through the valley, shaking stones, shaking bones. And when the dropships landed, not one of them aimed a weapon. They just stood in perfect rows like statues of discipline. Out of the center ship walked a woman in gray armor. Her face was sharp, her eyes bright with intelligence and exhaustion. She walked straight to Dane, stopped, and said only 3 words. "Mission status, Revenant." Dane looked at the base, at the rebels training under Nirax's command. He looked at Zalari, standing beside him like a bridge between species. And then he answered, "The galaxy remembers." The officer tapped her wrist and turned back without another word. No celebration, no cheering, just action, just protocol. Because this was not war, it was maintenance. The humans had not come to destroy. They had come to remind. Nirax stepped forward from the shadows. He bowed once again before the human fleet. And this time, the soldiers bowed back. Zalari stood frozen, not from fear, but from understanding. This was never about dominance. It was never about revenge. It was about balance. The kind of balance that comes from letting the universe know. There are rules, and sometimes you need predators to keep them. Above them, the clouds broke, and hundreds of other ships appeared, silent, still, endless. The kind of power that doesn't scream, because it doesn't need to. The stars looked smaller now, not because they had dimmed, but because Earth had stepped into the sky, and the galaxy had blinked. Dane turned to Zalari. "You asked why I came," he said. She nodded slowly. "I came to show them," he said, looking at the horizon, "that we were never the bottom of the food chain. We just walked softly, so no one would hear the teeth." He turned and walked toward the ship. Nirax followed. The rebels stood in silent respect. And Zalari, once a scientist, once a skeptic, felt something new bloom in her chest. Not fear, not loyalty, but belief, because in the end, it wasn't just beasts that bowed to the predator. Even the stars did.